Hey guys, I talk a lot about going to the right habitat, and I had one of you ask the wonderful question, which is very smart. What does that mean? What does it mean to go to the right habitat when I talk about that? And so I think it applies a little bit more towards songbirds for me when I kind of think about that and say that, but it applies to everything I photograph. So I'm out here in Newfoundland right now, and let's say I wanted to go photograph some spotted sandpipers and semi-palmated plovers. I didn't even know they were here in the first place, but now that I know they're here, going to the right habitat, what does that mean? Well, it means looking up the time of year it is right now, which it's mid-July, so kind of the end of their nesting season, but that means that most of them are going to be on their nesting grounds. So then I look up, where do they nest? And they like to nest in rocky gravel stuff like this, basically like what you see here, okay? So here we go, I'm in the right habitat. I would say, actually, this is a little bit wrong because, I don't know if you guys can see, but this is all sort of just basically solid rock here. There's not a lot of loose gravel, and there's a lot of other beachy sections here that are just like this, and then all of a sudden part of it gets into a lot more loose gravelly stuff. That's where they nest, okay? So that's what I would be looking to find. That would be going to the right habitat. And knowing how all of this coastline is in Newfoundland here, it's all basically like this when you get near the shoreline, unless it's like a sheer cliff. It's kind of like this sort of gradual, rocky approach to the ocean. And that means it's all shootable and it's all open space. And so you're gonna get great opportunities in any of these locations. So everywhere I've seen those species on this trip so far, and I've only been here a couple days, has been great to photograph because they like to nest and live in wide open spaces. I like to photograph in those spaces, not them. They don't do any of the photos. That's good. So that's going to the right habitat. I like to photograph warblers sometimes too. I'm sure you know. And they're around here as well. So going to the right habitat for those. I've been hearing blackpoll warblers. If that was a target, I would be going into these open spruce forests out on these barrens, these tundra barrens. I'm probably going to find them there. But I gotta be far enough north here on the island. I think the southern parts of this island or the other areas don't have them as much. So these northern tips here are definitely a little bit more in their habitat. There, I hear a common tern flying right now. Where's the right habitat? Coastline, that's it, right? They're almost always gonna be saltwater. Sometimes you'll catch them in freshwater, but these common terns around here, pretty much always gonna be saltwater. So I'm gonna look to try and find them flying along the coastline here if I wanna photograph them. As far as where, like exactly where, well, that's a couple of times I've seen them up in this cove up here. So they're probably consistent, and I actually hear a bunch of birds up in there right now. I mean, I could just go on and on, right? But that's what I mean about going to the right habitat. It's researching your species, finding out where they like to be, especially in the spring. That's usually the easiest way to nail them down, is in the breeding season, because all birds have very specific breeding habitat, but they all have habitat they like to be in general. So let's say I just want to target shorebirds, and let's pick a spot. Let's say I'm living in California on the West Coast, okay? Well, I'm gonna probably target shorebird migration. Other than the species that breed there all year, or I shouldn't say all year, but that breed there all spring, summer, and then leave in the fall, you're gonna be dealing with just migrating species. So I'm gonna just put myself along the coast. That's pretty much it, for most of them, right? But every so often there's some species that actually like to migrate inland a little bit and use a little bit more lakes and marshes and stuff like that, in which case I'm going to target those areas if I'm trying to get those species. So that's really all I mean, is like get yourself into the right habitat for that particular species. Whatever you're trying to photograph that day, research them, figure out where they like to be based on the time of year. Use eBird to see if they've been reported around that area at the time of year you're going to be trying to shoot there, and that should usually do the trick. Let's see, where am I going next? So I'm going to be driving out west after I work here in Newfoundland. And so one of the things I love photographing are the canyon wrens out there. I'm sorry, the rock wrens. And if I want to try and photograph them, I'm going to go out to the more open, rocky places actually look kind of similar to this, except it's a little bit more red rock out there. And then listen for them. Like, that's the right habitat. I'm just going to try and figure that out, you know. I want to try and photograph pronghorn again. So I'm going to go to the habitat that has the open rolling grasslands and meadows that are in the mountainous areas, you know. That's usually what I'm going to be looking for out there to find the pronghorn. If I wanted to photograph elk, I'm going to be going into the mountainous open, same thing, kind of like the open plains around where there's mountainous areas, and try and photograph them. I was trying to photograph caribou here, and so it's like going out into the tundra, the open barrens where those like to hang out and eat. And so that's the kind of stuff that I'm talking about. And with the birds, it's a little bit easier, I think. Well, I shouldn't say easier than mammals, but they're both easy enough to try and figure out. Easier to find is a tougher challenge, but that's really all I mean, guys, is just go into that habitat that kind of fits that species.